Karl's slide's always better than mine.
I didn't get them from AT&T.
into our map.
各位来宾，大家好，我叫魏卡尔，欢迎大家今天晚上参加我们的演讲会。今天晚上的演讲会题目叫做 China Selling to the Mobile Digital Dragon。中国人不是龙吗 ？Anyway, let me start this presentation by saying that I have dedicated much of my, in fact, my entire career to the high-tech industry with the Far East, specifically the greater Chinese markets. And for the past 10 years, I've helped a number of Washington State companies open China markets, greater Chinese markets. And China is basically the largest market, the largest wireless market in the world. Tonight's agenda will be, by the way, I'm sorry because there's so many slides, I'm going to have to ask that we hold most questions or any questions till the end. So tonight's agenda will consist of the following. We'll talk about trends, we'll talk about handsets, we'll talk about players, we'll talk about the subtle art of doing business with the Chinese, we'll talk about some of the problems Western companies, including Microsoft, have. Then we'll talk about strategies, conclusion, and then some Q&A. There are a bunch of wireless trends in China. I've only taken the most important ones. The fact is that 大陆市场是最大的无线电市场. It's the largest market for wireless communications in the world, surpassing the United States in year 2001. It's also basically continuing to deregulate, which is very, very good news for the entire world. Although there's some curveballs. 有一些变球，也要小心了。Okay, I'll talk about 2.5G, 3G, GSM, CDMA, GPRS, WCDMA, TDS CDMA. A little bit about Wi-Fi, LANs, Bluetooth, SMS, EMS, MMS. And then I'll talk about the emergence of camera phones a little bit, and basically you will find just about every type of cell phone with a camera phone in the future, so that you don't have to sit in the back there and take a picture with that kind of camera. You can just pull out your cell phone and take a picture, bing, bada, boom. Right. That's down the road, but I can tell you from my perspective, all of the handset manufacturers are looking to design in cameras because they're not very, it's expensive, but the costs are going down. A lot of the R&D is taking place in the Far East, as you know. China, again, the world's largest mobile market. And they're rolling out Wi-Fi tremendously in China. The build-out is tremendous. The build-out for 2.5 and believe it or not, 3G build-out is actually been announced. 中国联通 China Unicom has announced CDMA 2001X RTT. They've announced that they're building it, which will be very, very good news. That's the beginning of 3G, although China has not really released 3G licenses yet, but you can bet that everybody's jockeying for power right now. Well, if you're from China, everyone knows the three top ISPs. But did you know that the internet growth is just tremendous? Well, it actually has a lot to do with that SMS messaging. As you know, most of the portals, most of the ISPs have easy access for SMS, sending SMS messaging. It's a huge, huge revenue generator. And if you look at the cost for an SMS message, 人民币 0.10 码, very, very low cost to send an SMS message. 真的很便宜, 一分钱一分货. So for voice, it's actually 0.4. I mean, this is unbelievable. I'd like to go and make a lot of calls myself. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about something that maybe if you're not traveling beyond the Taiwan Straits, you may not know about. In fact, the situation is that a lot of the R&D that occurs in the mobile and in the wireless industry actually takes place in Taiwan, with China acting as more of an assembly area for at least the mobile handset industry right now. But that is changing. But I call it 大中国, Taiwan, 香港, 中国. Can I say 中国大陆?
大中华.
大中华. So, to talk about China, you must really talk about the three areas of China. Don't want to get into any political hot water here, so.
How about the three dragons?
Again, let's save the questions for the end. So where's the action? Well, in the wireless industry, a lot of the action's going on in Shanghai, some of it's going on in Xiamen, and some of it's going on in Shenzhen, Dongguan, and of course Beijing. But as you can see, there's a tremendous amount of activity going on in China. Now, let's look at the situation. They're saying that at the end of this year, mobile subscribers will outpace fixed line subscribers. China, for the past 10 years, has put in more fixed lines, and I mean mostly Guangqian, fiber. They put in more fixed lines than any place else in the world. So, if you think that there's a lot of mobile handsets simply because they don't have enough phone lines, that's not true. That's not true at all. They put in tremendous amount. In fact, China was the one and only fiber market left, really. Everything else has really gone down. The fiber industry is in really bad shape right now. Anyway, as you can see here, as the push from the coast inland, you will see basically more mobile users because, I mean, if they don't have fixed lines in Xinjiang or province now, you know, like they need, mobile will cover the issue. Mobile will handle a lot of that. Let me continue. You know, China's mobile handset diversity is tremendous. There are hundreds and hundreds of different types of cell phones in China. You will never see half them in the United States. Well, unless they're roaming here, unless they have a tri-band phone. There are many handsets that is designed for China only. You know, 中国人他们就是觉得那个买一个手机啊，就是我有很多 status 啊，我有手机啊，我有一个很好的手机啊，那能不能开，能不能那个能不能打开呀、能不能使用？ No， 我不知道怎么使用，但是我有手机啊，手机很好，很漂亮，彩色的印模。So you see, it's a status symbol actually for a lot of Chinese people. And if they know how to do anything, it's just make a simple call. They don't know any of the other functions, and there's quite a lot of functions in a smartphone. I'll talk later about smartphones. The mobile diversity. There's a mobile diversity going on here. A lot of people say. 奇怪，我不知道怎么购买哪一种手机啊 ？Smartphone, PDA, 普通的大哥大，我不知道，我要购买哪一种 ？Does anybody know? Does anybody really know? It is confusing, and there's a real convergence. Actually, if you ask Uncle Bill, he'll probably tell you just buy a smartphone. It'll help sell his smartphone platform. And I'll reserve comment, but I think Microsoft is on the right road. It's going to take them a while. Basically, I've kind of detailed what a simple cell phone is. That's the real cheapies. Basically, me and Faye, they're free of charge. They give it away. Please take it. I don't want it. Smartphones, they're not going to give those away. Those are more expensive. They pack a lot more power into them. Color screens, and then PDA devices. Basically, PDA devices usually have a stylus, and they also have touch screen. That's really how you tell much of the difference between a PDA and a smartphone. Smartphone is really meant, just like a cell phone, to be used with one hand, whereas a PDA, you know, you want to check attachments and things like that. The screen is bigger, typically on a PDA, and that's really quite essential when you're trying to check text from an attachment. So. There are, of course, many other functions, but these are just some of the major brands. You've got Motorola, you've got, well, actually, I believe that's Honda. That's the HTC product that's OEM for Orange. You've got Sony Ericsson, which is actually designed in Taiwan. You've got, again, the HTC product, which Microsoft is marketing to, well, Microsoft's software platform is in there, Pocket PC. and they're marketing that to AT&T and T-Mobile and many other providers. You've got another nice device here. That's the Trios by Handspring. Very nice product. That's mostly, that's for CDMA and GSM. Sprint is marketing that tremendously. You've got Palm, which has re-entered the market with a tungsten, which is fantastic. Very, very nice device. It's really should be looked at as a product to go for. And of course, then there's everybody that I know, every Chinese person that I know would love to have one of these babies. That's the compact iPack, because it does Chinese very, very well. You can get packages if you go to China or Taiwan. Perfect. My wife uses one. And my wife uses one here in Seattle. Let me continue.
Which one? Ring? Ring.
No.
User emotion?
No, RIM has their own proprietary kind of platform, but RIM is working with some of the providers. Why is it not working? There we go. Oop.
Oh.
哎，怎么了？不是power 问题吧？
No,
Oh, you open the webpage?
no.
Or is it closed up and start over again?
Okay.
There you go.
Some mobile subscriber user patent data emerges. China Mobile has a very high annual average revenue per user rate, and China Unicom is catching up. Basically, they expect about 250 million subscribers this year in China. That's unbelievable. And you know what? That's only 25%. 25%的那个使用者容量. So that's nothing. It's tremendous. Look for Bluetooth to be designed in every single handset by year 2006. It's perfect. Bluetooth is a very short solution for the handset. It does a lot more than just work on a handset as well. By the way, that has Bluetooth right there. Look for Bluetooth to be put in so many different devices, but on the handset side, look for Bluetooth to be put into PDAs and smartphones, especially PDAs. Can you imagine taking the PDA and putting it up to your ear to make a phone call? Looks kind of funky, doesn't it? Well, if you have Bluetooth functionality, you can use a wireless earpiece. Jabra and Plantronics has come out with very nice wireless earpieces. There's a ton more coming out. And so when you do get a call, you just click this on wirelessly, bing, bada, boom. You can talk to the client. It looks kind of strange using a cell phone, using a smartphone or a PDA, and then talking to it. It's kind of difficult. Your face is not flat, you know, like the PDA. So look for Bluetooth. It's going to be very popular. Now, WLAN in Asia, it's big. I talk to people at Starbucks and they tell me, well, we're rolling out a lot in the United States. I say, look, man, that isn't half of what's going on in Asia. It's tremendous in the Far East. Every single country. If you look here at Singapore, Hong Kong, South Korea, Japan, China, Taiwan, and then you compare with the United States, we're actually a little behind. Look at this. Starbucks is coming to the Forbidden City. Maybe Pui will order a cup of coffee. I don't know. Anyway, when you look at the situation with WLAN in China, 802.11, Starbucks has over 50 outlets in China. 我觉得很奇怪，我以为中国人不可能喝咖啡啊。
It's American way, American style.
It's a status symbol.
莫名其妙。Anyway, WLAN is rolling out in the Starbucks. I think China Unicom is working on that. As you can see here, China Netcom, China Telecom, and China Mobile, they're all rolling out Wi-Fi in China. There are going to be more Wi-Fi sites in China than the United States. Why? Well, the cost is really, really cheap, and a lot of the products are coming from within Asia. Let's talk very briefly about 3G migration. I call it the World War 3G. One country, three systems. China is positioning itself on the world stage to be a player in over-the-air protocols. There is no doubt about it, and the Chinese government will at least help out, because that helps the country, basically. You know, China wants to grow its indigenous technology. There's no mistaking that. So Basically, GSM handsets have now, for the most part, enabled GPRS, and Edge is a software solution. WCDMA is basically the European WCDMA is the European version of CDMA 2000 from Qualcomm. Qualcomm really invented this technology about 10 or 12 years ago, well, maybe 15 now. But actually, the technology did come from the United States military, and then Qualcomm commercialized it. They're looking to you to do eDVO and eventually DV. Qualcomm in China Unicom really went out on a branch to use this technology, and this was a really big political thing with the WTO in year 2000 and 2001. Basically, the U.S. government said, no Qualcomm, no WTO, and the Chinese said, hey, what's that all about? We have a standard already, and you want to push this. There's a lot of money involved in this, multi-billion dollars. And China's big enough. The goal is that China is big enough for 3 protocols, so why not? Why not? The question for the equipment vendors is, which one? Which one do I use? I don't have the answer either. Anyway, TD-SCDMA is the Chinese government's version. Not necessarily the Chinese government, but it is basically a company called Datang, which has worked with Huawei and a bunch of other companies. But basically, Datang has ventured, or kind of like joint partners with Siemens, and Samsung has kind of come along for the ride. Samsung's very interesting. As soon as somebody comes out with new technology, they say, "Well, I'm with them, and I'm with them, and Samsung's with everybody." But Samsung is doing very well in China. They're doing quite well. Let me go on further. So basically, looking at the carriers' revenue breakdown, the government wants the carriers to make money, but they don't want the carriers to have too much power, so that's why they've split the carriers. And as you notice, this is probably the best situation. This is what the government likes, to see equal distribution with the different types of services and creative services in China. China Mobile, China Telecom, China Unicom, Netcom. Now the next picture is going to be really funky here. Oh man, this deregulation continues and continues and continues. I don't know. There's a new minister for the Ministry of Information Industry, so you can expect more deregulation and more changes. But if you look what's happened most recently, China Netcom controls the north here, and China Telecom controls the south. This is for fixed line. This is the mobile handset, part of the mobile handset presentation I gave in 2001, and I told them, look where the Chinese are. They're nowhere. Look where Motorola and Nokia is, and basically some of the other players. That was year 2001. China manufacturers are now 39%. Motorola is 26%, Nokia is 18%. If you ask Nokia, they'll say we're number 1, Motorola's number 2. If you ask Motorola, they'll say we're number 1, Nokia's number 2. These figures come directly from the Ministry of Information Industry in China, and these came to me in March. Basically, Siemens is still hanging in there. Sony Ericsson, Samsung is doing well. Although I thought Samsung's figures would be a lot higher. Basically, domestic handset vendors, they're using price. They're using the price to bring down the cost and force the foreign companies to lower the pricing. Why not? It is a very crowded handset market. Unfortunately, the Chinese that was there is now little boxes. Sorry about that. If you look at some of the Chinese manufacturers, Haier, Lianxiang, Legend, Kejian, China Kejian and TCL, and also Ningbo Bird. Those are probably the 5 top cell phone manufacturers in China today. What's very interesting is to look here, and you see that they've now risen 39%, where the Western and the foreign companies are going down. It's obvious that Microsoft should be, if there are any Microsoft mobile device division people here, it should be pretty obvious that you should be going after the mainland Chinese mobile handset vendors. But you cannot ignore the Taiwanese, because they're the ones who are designing all the handsets. These are the domestic handset vendors. Only one foreign company making CDMA handsets. That's Motorola. These companies have all partnered with foreign companies. Look at all the companies to date manufacturing cell phones in China. There are 37 of them. It's huge. They're all making money. I don't know how long, but they're all making money. And they're designing unique models, some of them. As I mentioned here before, I consider the evolution of the handset industry. First of all, the Taiwanese don't want to give up the technology to China. Why? I mean, that's almost cutting their own throats. So they keep the R&D in place in Taipei. The orders come in from people like Motorola, Sony Ericsson, Nokia, Siemens. Oh yes, Nokia is also doing things in Taiwan. It's just very hush-hush. As you know, there's a lot of politics involved between Taiwan and China. But basically, most of the R&D takes place in Taiwan on OEM and ODM for smartphones, cell phones, and PDA devices. Then it's taken into China to assemble. The mainland Chinese handset manufacturer strategies is number 1, market. Number 2, human resources and talent to market and sell. Number 3, technology. So for the mobile handset vendors, technology is not critical right now. They'll get it eventually. Just mamamai. So basically, as I mentioned down here, China could own 80% of the market by 2005. Well, we're in 2003 now, and they're already at about 40. Amazing things happen in China. These are some of the Taiwanese vendors that do a lot of the OEM work. China Unicom had some very interesting strategies when they started selling CDMA handsets. Unfortunately, what happened is they were targeting the wrong segment of the market in the beginning for CDMA handsets. And but it is amazing what's going on in China right now. So if you think that they're just making voice calls, no way. They're doing SMS messaging, MMS messaging. I'll discuss that a little bit further. But what's very interesting to note is how they entered the market. CDMA was positioned very high end, and GSM was positioned on the low end. That has now changed. They have basically positioned CDMA to the medium to low end and GSM to the high end. They experienced very, very slow sales in the year 2002, and so they subsidized the handset, did a little bit of marketing, and 7 million subscribers in 1 year. Pretty amazing. Messaging services. SMS is a proven revenue generator in China. So that's probably where millionaires are making their money, sending these SMS portals and the facility for SMS messaging, software that provides SMS messaging, which has to deal with the carrier and the ISP. When you look at typical content, there's a lot of icon download. Cute little icons. And also ringtones, really funky ringtones in China. Jokes in Chinese. Photos, 一些图片, and also SMS emailing service, There's a lot that can be done. And online gaming is also getting quite popular. I believe that if you look here, you'll see that China will probably have about 13% of the MMS messaging market once 3G starts to roll, and Japan has will have about 10, and India. You'll probably be surprised when you see that. But actually, India is probably the second largest growth market for technology, for telecom and wireless. Perhaps in Asia, absolutely the second largest. There's a lot going on. China looks at India. India looks at China. They're fierce competitors in software. Xiaolingtong. Everybody knows what Xiaolingtong is if they've been back to China. It's really, really, really cheap. It's fixed wireless. Wireless local loop, we call it. And basically, this is a way for China Netcom and China Telecom in the short run to make some real quick revenue using UT Starcom's wireless local loop solution to gain subscribers. The thing is somebody said, 很奇怪，我们要卖这个很贵的手机，可是中国人不会漫游到美国，不会，很多中国人不可能漫游， 不可能离开他们的神，不可能离开他们的国家。So 为什么我需要一个 GSM 的手机？为什么？我不需要。So if you don't need to roam outside your province, outside your state, well, why not just have fixed wireless and roam just in the city area? That's what Xiaolingtong does. It's a very, very low-cost solution. Hey, I don't need to talk to some guy in New York. I'm just selling sneakers, locally. I don't really care about GSM. I'm not going to Australia. So Xiaolingtong, basically it's fixed line, but it offers a real low-cost solution. And I really wish they had this in the United States. CCP, calling party pays. So, you can just say to everybody you talk to, hey, give me a call. Just call me. I can't call you. Give me a call. So, basically, that makes these phones really cheap in China. And there's no connection fee either. So this is very low cost, and it's going on now. Will they be able to interface with 3G? I'm not sure, but it looks like that's the goal. Basically, it's citywide now. It's rolled out. It's going to have about 20 million subscribers. When 3G comes around, though, I think that its life may. Well, then again, if you're still roaming in your city, do you really need 3G? If you're not sending pictures, so you have to really identify the user, what the user wants, what the user does. 中国人说一分钱一分货。如果手机太贵，我也不可能买很贵的那个三代的那个手机。Okay, I want to talk, and please excuse the Chinese because I studied my Chinese in Taiwan. What is that? Is there something wrong there?
No, we thought you want to say you studied Chinese in 中华民国.
Oh no. Basically, this part, I'm sorry, that was a really quick overview of technology in China. And we can talk a little bit further at the end. But I wanted to talk a little bit now, and this may be a lot of overview for those of you that are from China. But let me quickly go through it then. We want to talk about the business personality in China. We want to talk about influence. What's influencing China right now? Oh, an awful lot. Plus, we Americans are influencing China. Yes, even though they may not say it. Yes, we are. There's a Chinese circle of influence, which I'll talk to you about. Confucianism, 孔子思想, still alive in China. Face, 面子, and 关系. You've heard these before. Understanding the legal environment and navigating the system of red tape. Chinese business culture is very 复杂. It's very complex. And you have to understand the Chinese people to be successful doing business in China. And it's very critical to have the right tools. Where do you get the right tools? Well, with experience. You have to go to China. So, expect the unexpected. But if you're expecting the unexpected, well, then it won't be so unexpected. But expect that because that's what's going to happen from day one. There are a lot of influences influencing China today, a tremendous amount. You've got the mobile and the wireless industry, the internet, free economy, Western culture, that's 我们所谓的老外. Overseas, 华侨, okay? Socialism and 普通的文化就是古董的文化，中国人的文化，传统。Now this is interesting. I've had a lot of Chinese people who want to find out how old I am, so they don't ask me, 喂Karl，你几岁? No, this is not the Chinese way. No. Chinese will say, where'd you go to school? When did you get out? How long have you been married? How many kids? In the West, those questions are also rather sensitive. But the Chinese might still, well, all the Chinese I know still ask. But asking your age is kind of tough, So they use what I call this Chinese circle of influence. It's almost reminiscent of the Chinese table, where you notice how it's always round? Isn't that interesting? Well, In a restaurant anyway, most of the time. It's round. That's because the Chinese view things with continuity. There's always a That's why the Chinese know how to beat the Americans in business. And the reason is because the Americans don't realize that life is a real big circle, a full circle. Okay? The Americans, if they lose their shirt in China, they get away, they go out. The Chinese, if they don't sell well the first year, the second year, do they give up? Do they pack their bags? Do they go home? No way, man. No way. 他们会继续努力开发市场. So, basically, if you understand the Chinese way of doing things, you'll realize that they don't just directly go out and ask a question. They will figure out ways to ask the question in other ways in order not to embarrass you. Because remember, 你的面子很重要. Your face is very important. So, basically, face and guanqi are very, very critical. But in China, in particular, Chinese societies have a very, very straight protocol and hierarchy structure, especially the government, but also enterprises, especially big enterprises. Smaller enterprises are a little bit more 比较随随便便. Personal expression. No, you don't just 随便讲话 when the senior person is talking, or you just don't say 我有我的意见. So it really is true that the nails that sticks out really does get pounded back down very quickly in the wood in China. I might be oversimplifying that, but I see in China today you have the older generation who are the bosses, and many of them don't speak English, many of them don't travel to the West, and many of them don't watch Western movies, or if they don't like to. Then you've got the young 20 to 35s. Man, these guys know everything that's going on at CNN, and they know everything, and they're very, very savvy. And 他们都会讲英文. They all speak English, and they know what's going on. They're looking at the internet every single day. There's a generation gap there. There really is. But that is the hierarchy in China. As you know, relationships are emphasized over laws and contracts. So the Chinese are very 灵活, basically a very flexible culture. Flexibility has allowed the Chinese culture to survive 5000年, right? Yeah. Being flexible has allowed the Chinese people to survive 5,000 years by being flexible, knowing when to wait for the opportunity, and knowing when not to overthrow. Or there have been a lot of dynasties in China. Anyway, basically, what I want to talk about here is the relationship between the Western and the Eastern mind. And basically, in the East, guanxi starts first. You develop the guanxi, then you develop the trust, then you can ask for a goal or a task to be done by that person. Kind of like how Dan and I got to know each other. That is very, very critical. Now, guy in the West, okay, I'm an American, I'm going into China, and I have a product, put it right on the table. Hey, you want to buy? You want to buy? And believe me, I've been involved in that too, and I've told the American, basically, when you're dealing with the Chinese, you have to form the relationship first. Once you form the relationship, then you can get and gain the credibility and the trust. And believe me, for Lao Wai, it's very difficult to gain trust amongst the Chinese people in China, or Taiwan, or Hong Kong. It takes a long time. It's not a 1 week business trip to China. So, anyway, basically, Americans need to understand the Chinese way of thinking, and then they will be perhaps a bit more successful. At least it's helped me. Preserving individual integrity. Oh man, I could tell you one time when I made my wife lost her face, I almost had to get down on all fours and do 1,000 kowtows. And it was a very, very simple thing. I just said, honey, your dress doesn't look so nice. Oh, what a big mistake. My wife is from Taiwan. Oh man, I learned about face very, very quickly. And so I have, I can tell you another very interesting incident where I lost my face. And this was when I was just studying Chinese in Taiwan. I had a bus ticket in my hand, and I thought I was a cool dude, you know. I walked up to the place where they sell tickets and I said, 这个是我的 我的外婆，我要另外一个。Translation, I said, this bus ticket, I said, this is my grandmother, I want another one. And the woman that looked at me like I was crazy. What is going on with this guy? Basically, face goes both ways. Foreigners also need to preserve their face. They need to preserve the Chinese face in China. They need to preserve their face and the Chinese face. It's very, very critical. And, 不可以丢脸. You cannot let anybody lose their face in China. You will not do business in China if you make the key people lose face. You simply won't. It doesn't matter if you're Microsoft, IBM, or Intel. It's very, very critical. 关系. What does 关系mean? 关, right? Close. And 系统, right? System. So, actually, oh gee, what do we have here? Gee, we got a closed system. Well, that doesn't help when you try. That doesn't really help when you try to sell a product. So what do? You break open the closed system by developing the guanxi. That's what you do, and that may not take overnight or on a one-week business trip to China. So guanxi, as everybody's heard about guanxi. Guanxi is very, very important. Basically, it's critical. And I call it, guanxi equals 财富, right? So you really need to build a guanxi. Don't go there trying to sell a product first. Go there building the guanxi with the government, with the private enterprise, with the associations, the wireless community in China. That's how you do it in the wireless industry. You have to understand China's legal environment and contract usage. Contracts are flexible in China. They are not black and white. They are not black and white. They are subject to change, and more change after that. So basically, the bottom line here is, in the Chinese mind, contracts can be changed to suit, of course, the Chinese situation. If you want to do business in China, you need to be flexible. Navigating China's socialist system and red tape. China didn't just invent bureaucracy, they invented propaganda and persuasion. And if you've ever read Sun Tzu Bingfa, it's probably very important if you're doing business with China to probably read that book because it's in most MBA classes in the West. It's very, very important strategies for how to deal with business, almost like you're dealing with war. And that's what Sun Tzu came up with almost 2,000 years ago. So the Japanese learned from the Chinese, not the other way around. The Japanese way of doing business is directly borrowed from Sun Tzu. I don't know if anybody really knows that. That's true. It's a socialist bureaucracy, and that is changing. I think the government of China has really done tremendous things in the past 5 years, especially in the wireless industry. But it is difficult to make commitments without group consultation. Nobody's just gonna. If I'm the guy and if I'm the big boss and you coming with your technology, I'm not just gonna say, okay, yes, we're gonna use it. I agree. I confirm.